of Environmental Conservation. The process for tonight's hearing will be as follows. I will call 10 names in order, and I will ask those 10 people to sit in the very first row. It's marked speaker seating. Come down, be seated. After you've spoken, please return to your original seat. The presiding officer here will be Stephen Russo. He is the Deputy Commissioner for DEC and also the General Counsel. You will have 3 minutes to speak. You will be able to see the amount of time you have available on the timer behind you. When you reach your 3 minutes, some people get a little excited and they might go over. I'll ring this small bell as a reminder. We'll ask you to wrap up, and if at that point our presiding officer may ask you again to leave the microphone. I would like to remind people that if you extend beyond the time, you're actually using someone else's time, and we want to get as many comments as we can in tonight. I would also ask that you limit your applause. That allows us to get more speakers in. And I will remind everyone that the restrooms are out this door that you entered in to your left. And at this time, I'll turn it over to our presiding officer, Stephen Russo.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Good evening, everyone. My name is Stephen Russo, and as Harold said, I'm the Deputy Commissioner and General Counsel at the New York State Department of Conservation, and I will be presiding over tonight's legislative hearing. This hearing is to receive public comments on the revised supplemental generic environmental impact statement, the proposed high-volume hydraulic fracturing regulations, and the proposed state pollution discharge elimination system general permit. At this time, I declare that this legislative hearing is open. This hearing is being held pursuant to Title VI of the official compilation of the codes, rules, and regulations of the State of New York, Part 621. The DEC will be accepting oral comments here this evening. We will also be accepting written comments until January 11th, 2012, because the Commissioner yesterday determined that it would be a 30-day extension from the previously advertised end of comment period of December 12th, 2011. So I repeat that comments will be accepted up and through January 11th, 2012. The mailing address for the submission of the comments is available on the tables outside the hearing that you passed as you entered the room, as well as on our website. I do want to stress that equal weight is given to oral and written comments, so if for some reason you don't get a chance here to speak this evening, I encourage you to submit those written comments. They are weighed just as heavily as anything said here tonight. As I stated, the purpose of this legislative hearing is to hear and receive statements from the public relating to the EIS, the regulations, and the Speedy's general permit. It is not a question and answer session, and no questions will be answered on the record here this evening. The comments received here tonight will form part of the official administrative record for the review of the proposed regulations, the draft permit, and the revised SGEIS, and will be responded to in writing at a later date. Anyone who wishes to speak tonight has to fill out a speaker card, and then you need to hand that card back in so we have it, and as they were numbered, and you will be called in the number that is reflected on that. Any elected officials will be permitted to speak first, and then the comments from the general public. As we talked, we're going to be calling people up in blocks of 10 to sit in this front row, and then you'll be called up, and when we get to the last 2 speakers of that group of 10, we will call the next group of 10, and so on until the hearing comes to a close. Let me apologize in advance if any of us mispronounce your name. If it's mispronounced, you should, of course, please correct us. We're doing our best. After your name is called, please come forward, speak into the microphone, and clearly and slowly, because we have this court reporter, to my right, a stenographer who is writing down everything you say, and it's important that you speak loudly and clearly and not too fast. I know we're in New York City, but not too fast so we can get down everything. Begin with your name, address, and if you're speaking on behalf of someone or a group of people. As you see, we have quite a few people in the auditorium and people who wish to speak, so we're going to strictly enforce the 3-minute limit. People were pretty good in the afternoon, but as Mr. Evans said, if you speak over your 3 minutes, you're really eating into other people's time. As we said before as well, I understand, people want to applaud or anything at the end, but please try to keep that to a minimum so, again, we can keep things moving. Please do not interrupt any speakers, either with applause or with booing or anything like that. This is an official legislative hearing, and it takes a lot for people to get up here and speak in front of all these people, and please afford them the respect that you would want if you were a speaker up at the microphone. I think it's very, very important, and just in no circumstances, this is a governmental administrative proceeding, legislative hearing. Booing and interrupting people as they speak is just unacceptable, and we're going to stop the clock, and it's, again, going to eat into people's time. So I just please ask everyone to show every one of our speakers respect. With that, I would ask everyone to please silence your cell phones, and we will call the first speaker.
Okay, our first 10 speakers will be Garland Roberts, Sylvia Jordan, Bill Southern, Mary Ann Rose, Susanna Glidden, Ann Wilson, Carl Arnold, Alfred Magnus, and Mark Dynan.
Proceed, sir.
Mr. Evans, if you ring the bell, do I get my wings?
It is that season, I guess.
Garland Roberts. I'm head of the Black Alumni of Brooklyn Technical High School. I'm also with Veterans Saving America and the World. I also was Assistant Secretary of Defense under George Bush Sr., and I won't even tell you why I quit on account of Ashcroft and Cheney, but that's another question. But the main thing is I'm here because everything that you see and are dealing is lies. Number one, I want to explain that there is a direct connection between the burial ground up here, and I better talk faster, because the burial ground originally was owned by some Dutch blacks by the name of Alexander, and they own Crippen's Creek. And Crippen's Creek happens to feed right under this building. So if the refraction comes down and starts bleeding into New York, the first people that are going to be hit with problems are the people in this building. Now, the main thing is I'm a caver, so I'm used to seeing what's underneath the ground. They have done no analyses of the voids and all the interconnections that are under this earth. As a caver, we do exploratory work, and they cannot deal with the bans that they are putting forward because these underground caverns go for hundreds of miles. Some of them go across the whole United States and under the ocean and actually wind up in other continents, and that's not being taken into effect. The main thing in the situation is that these caverns feed up into springs and other things that have been dormant for centuries. Should they refract, these pools, chambers, and springs will become active, and these refractive byproducts and toxic materials will come out of your mountains, out of your lakes, out of the ground, and will completely contaminate everything that you know and feel. Within 2 years to 3 years, New York can be in a situation where we may not have water. But then again, I look at another thing. A lot of the Wall Street people are buying up water from other industries and are actually talking about desalination. So maybe they want us to buy the water after they mess up our water. But the main thing is we cannot have refracting because they did not do the environmental work of checking what is underneath the ground and the interconnections. And I'm throwing a challenge that the governor and anybody that's on these panels, I will take them underground and show them the continental movement underground and these voids and everything else that are in slurries that can move with water.
Thank you. Sylvia Jordan.
I'm all set to go.
Yes, right, Ms.
Well, they always say I don't talk loud enough, so now I have a mic. And I have to tell you, I'm a miracle baby. I was born at Long Island College Hospital, 346 Henry Street. And guess what? I have a neck. I'm a miracle. My neck is only, in the front, is only 1 inch. and in the back I have a normal back and vertebrae. So when you all think I'm sleeping, I can't raise my neck, but I'm alive, and I forgot my teeth today, and now you know me natural like I was born. So therefore, I was conceived on November of 1918. And on the gondolier, I came in sailing to help because of these young people. The miracle of my life, I know the one that they took away. Hartman did not commit or do anything, and he came to me and showed me 2 Christmas trees, one on the left and one on the right, and showed me the wedding band. That was my wedding band, being a widow of a veteran. So what I want you to know, quick, guess what? I'm with you all. Quick, because of those dreams and all that's real and true. And I know that all of you people here today gathered, of all ages, are for what is right, and that I am with you, young people. Guess what? I might die any minute, but I'm going to stick with you until I die. I'll lay down, and they can kill me like they killed Hartman, who was innocent. All right? You ready for me to do it? Gondolier. That's what we are. Fraction of what? Health. Humanity. All people equal. Iroquois.
Thank you. It's time we're calling Senator Velmanet Montgomery.
Good
Senator.
evening. Good evening to the commissioners and to also our governor and in concert with my colleagues. I welcome you to the city. Thank you for coming here, and I hope you could spend even another day. I am speaking respectfully to call on you and ask our governor to agree to continue a ban on hydraulic fracturing throughout this state. Horizontal drilling and hydrofracking pose an unacceptable risk to our drinking water and the quality of groundwater aquifers, lakes, and streams in the state. Drilling will introduce over 250 or more chemicals into our air and water, placing local residents, wildlife, farming industry, the critical agricultural and watershed areas at risk in our state. What are these chemicals being used? How do they react in combination with each other and with any substances they encounter below the surface or with water and other liquids? What are the effects of the wastewater or the gases burned off as part of the process? What effect will they have in combination with other pollutants that we already have in our environment? How will they spread? What will be the effect on our crops or our animals or our children? Why is there a suspect correlation in the increase in earthquakes in hydrofracking areas? What is really going on down there? Why has this not been independently studied by the state of New York completely, as well as the federal government? And why has this not been a major front-burning issue as it relates to our environment? Who has been reliant? The citizens of this state have been reliant upon the studies sponsored or provided by the very industry we are meant to regulate. Please, let's do our job. What we don't know about the answers to the above questions that I just asked can hurt us, indeed can kill us, can hurt our generations to come. it can give us, without answers to this question, are we susceptible to cancers? Will we require trillions of dollars, especially in the expense of New York City?
Please sum up, Senator.
Trillions of dollars for water filtration systems, and make us suffer the incalculable loss of both forest and farmland of our entire agricultural industry.
Thank you,
and a
Senator.
general decline in well-being.
Thank you very much.
Commissioners, you and I have an obligation, a responsibility to the future generations of our state. Let's not throw away our environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Bill Southern.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Bill Southern. I'm an environmental scientist, a certified industrial hygienist, and the president of Microecology, a Harlem-based environmental consulting firm. I'm also a doctoral candidate in the School of Urban Public Health at the City University of New York. I speak here tonight on behalf of myself and Microecologies. Natural gas is the cleanest burning fossil fuel, and it has the potential to be the fossil fuel that is least damaging to our environment while having the least negative impact on public health, not only in New York State, but across America and across our planet. The abundance of this natural resource, locked into tight shale formations that were laid down for us some 400 million years ago, are said by many industry experts to provide enough energy to fuel our power plants and heat our buildings for the next 100 years, serving as a true transition fuel, bridging the fossil fuel age of the past 200 years with the renewable fuel age that we must swiftly be moving toward to preserve and safeguard the God-given richness of our state and our planet for our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren who will be our descendants on this planet during the 22nd century. The question then that I believe each of us must ask is, if our legislature and our governor decide to allow hydraulic fracturing in New York State, then how do we regulate and control the extraction of this resource in such a way as to balance our demand for energy with our responsibility to minimize damage to our environment and the health of our residents? While I would like to acknowledge the efforts of the DEC for the research and preparation of the SGEIS, it should be crystal clear, based on the comments that we have heard here today, that the SGEIS is deficient in its protection of the environment and the health of New York residents in a number of ways. Two of these deficiencies are the subject of my comments here this evening. Number one, the regulations must require the on-site treatment and reuse of flowback. Given that the average well is fracked 5 times, this will result in an 80% reduction in flowback wastewater disposal requirements. The on-site treatment requirement will also result in the final flowback being pre-treated on-site to allow for safe disposal at qualified and licensed industrial water treatment facilities. This requirement will also reduce truck traffic to and from the well pad by approximately 50%. Additionally, this requirement will create a range of jobs from waste treatment engineers and technicians to factory workers in the waste disposal equipment manufacturing industry. Number two, the regulations must require that the natural gas companies who reap the financial benefits from the extraction of this transition fuel pay a specified percentage of their revenues to the state to be used solely for the purpose of developing a renewable energy industry in New York State that will provide long-term, good-paying, high-skilled jobs for our residents for the next 100 years and beyond, and thereby fulfill the promise of shale gas being a true transitional fuel. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now, people, again, please, show all the speakers respect that you would want if you were up there. Thank you. Next, I'm going to call our Manhattan Borough President, Scott Stringer. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Ms. Rose, you'll go next. I apologize.
Okay, good evening, Councilor Russo. And I want to ask you to thank Governor Cuomo and the DEC for recognizing the importance of today's public hearing. And I'm very pleased that the DEC is approaching this issue with the seriousness that it deserves. And I hope that you will take a look around this room. The environmentalists and advocates who are gathered here tonight have fought this fight for the last 3 years, and now we've reached the moment of truth. I urge the DEC not to issue a final SGEIS until all pending studies from the Environmental Protection Agency have been published. New Yorkers deserve to have all of the facts on the table before an environmental decision of this consequence is made. This issue is far too important to be rushed. The natural gas has been trapped in the Marcellus Shale for 380 million years and will still be there after the EPA releases its report. The stakes are far too high to rush through this process. And I'd like to use my time just to focus on two very important aspects of the SGEIS, buffer zones and regulations. The revised draft does not provide adequate protection for the city's vast subsurface water delivery infrastructure. A 1,000-foot buffer around tunnels and aqueducts that deliver unfiltered water from the Catskill-Delaware watershed is totally unacceptable. This inadequate buffer zone will compromise the purity of the city's unfiltered drinking water and could gravely damage our water delivery infrastructure. If the DEC allows the 1,000-foot buffer zones, it will put New Yorkers at enormous risk, and I want to just run through those risks. The risk posed by the potential accumulation of methane gas in and around the tunnels and shafts. Also, the risk to water tunnels that could result from elevated external pressures in the regional stress field from hydraulic fracturing. The potential for vertical migration of fracturing fluid via geological faults or fractures into water delivery tunnels. The 1,000-foot buffer zone that the DEC currently proposes is clearly insufficient and must be increased substantially before anybody has any further discussion. I also want to say that I respect the DEC. Obviously, I respect you and the commissioner. But I want to talk about staffing, DEC staffing. One of the bitter lessons learned from the recent deep-water horizontal oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico was that an anemic government regulatory body is a recipe for disaster. The chronically understaffed Minerals Management Service did not have the manpower or the political heft to sufficiently patrol the types of drilling that they were supposed to regulate. The result was an unprecedented environmental catastrophe, the likes the world has rarely seen. We cannot allow the prospect of inadequate DEC staffing levels to weaken the capacity of an extremely capable agency. I urge all levels of state government to keep this point in mind when we think about hydraulic fracturing in New York State. And finally, I just want to say that based on the experience I have researched and seen in other states, I cannot endorse the use of hydraulic fracturing anywhere in this state.
Thank you. Can you sum up?
This is, and I'm going to wrap up, but this is the #1 environmental issue that we face in the United States and in New York. We should not be followers here. We should, in fact, be leaders. We can protect our water, and we can, quite frankly, protect the planet if we are strategic, if we are smart. The reality is that natural gas can do the world a lot of good. But the reality is that we do not have the scientific knowledge base or the know-how or the wherewithal to extract this gas safely. And it's time we owned up to this, as other countries around the world are now recognizing it.
Thank you very much.
So
You're making me look bad.
in the interest of full disclosure, I know Steve Russo, so he's trying to get me off, but I'm going to say one more thing. I'm going to take advantage of our friendship. He doesn't smile like this, but he's stuck with me. So I do want to just say one thing. Scientists are very smart, and people who look at environmental protocols are very smart. But the bottom line here, Steve, the bottom line here, commissioners, is if we do hydraulic fracture in New York State, it will be the roll of a dice. It will be a gamble that we can't afford and our children can't afford. Please, listen to what people here have to say. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Mary Ann Rose, thank you for being patient. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm a director of the Croton Watershed Clean Water Coalition, an alliance of individuals and groups who believe that safe, clean, and affordable drinking water is a basic human right. I'll give you 4 main reasons why high-volume hydrofracturing should be prohibited by law in New York State and banned. Number 1, the SGEIS allows a ridiculously high density of well pads, only 500 feet from your private well or 2 New York City blocks. The Marcellus-Utica landscape, overwhelmingly forested and agricultural in New York State, will be pockmarked with well pads, its forests fragmented by roads and pipelines and unable anymore to provide clean water, its agricultural soils contaminated and compacted and rendered useless. Number 2, there's no plan for the safe, long-term disposal of the high levels of radioactive waste in New York State shale that reach the surface with the brine. Levels of radium-226, in many cases, up to 1,000 times the safe limit. Radium-226 has a half-life of 1,000 times the safe limit and up to and has a half-life up to 1,600 years, a long-term disposal problem for the next 80 generations. The DEC has yet to produce a cumulative impact assessment of the thousands of wells that could be drilled, even though such an assessment is recommended under Section 617(10)(a)(1) of SECRA. Number 4, existing sustainable industries such as forestry, agriculture, tourism, and viticulture will be destroyed by fracking, but the SGEIS is vague regarding fracking economic viability. Here's what the SGEIS says on page 2-4 of the economic assessment. Quote, given the large uncertainties associated with the future natural gas market, the economic and demographic disparities between different parts of New York State, and other unknown factors that would influence the development of the natural gas reserves in low permeability shale in the state, specific economic forecasts have not been developed for this report. In other words, we are being asked to accede to the ruination of our land and to abandon long-term sustainable industries for, quote, a pig in a poke. No way, no way. Fracking in New York State must be prohibited by law and banned.
Thank you. Ms. Rose, if you could leave your comments in the box. Could you leave them? Okay. Susanna Glidden, but I just want to remind the speakers, if you do have comment written down, you should leave in the box. It'll assist the court reporter. Thank you.
Hydrofracking is a crime against humanity and our Mother Earth that must be prohibited and criminalized in our state, our nation, and around the world. In place of extreme fossil fuel energy extraction that drives us towards global warming extinction, we demand a massive renewable energy program to lift our economies and allow us, other species, our natural resources, and our planet to survive. This ludicrous SGEIS of a criminal act perhaps reflects an impeachable offense of the administration steering it. Is it not? Is it not impeachable to put the majority of New Yorkers at economic and fatal risk? Is it not a high crime and misdemeanor to avoid addressing full build-out of cumulative impacts on our precious finite supply of fresh water, without which we cannot survive, on the air we breathe, on the land we till, on the forest that keeps our water clean and purifies and cools our air? Is it not impeachable to avoid addressing radioactivity and frake waste fluid pouring into our rivers from sewage treatment plants and drill cuttings disposal in our landfills, a health assessment, methane's fugitive impact on global warming, pipeline fragmentation, an economic study of the ruinous impacts on sustainable industries, including the very food we eat, on other species and biodiversity, tourism, property values, tax revenues, communities, road repair, emergency and health services. Prevent catastrophe in New York State as in Pennsylvania and other frack states. We demand this deficient SGEIS and draft regulations be withdrawn. We demand that all New York State legislators immediately become co-sponsors and pass the hydraulic fracturing prohibition bill, S 4220, A 7218, and add to it prohibition of accepting out-of-state frack waste fluid and drill cuttings, any water withdrawal for use in fracking-related activity outside New York, and all permits already issued for vertical or horizontal drilling using this process immediately rescinded. Tax the rich and the institutions that foisted fraudulent, toxic debt upon us to pay off the debt and fund an urgently needed renewable energy program. Break the stranglehold of corporate government tyranny. Represent our will by putting New Yorkers to work with jobs and energy that save us rather than kill us. Criminalize hydrofrackers and hydrofracking. Make it the Class C felony that it is.
Thank you. Julie Menon, and I want to remind people, I want to remind the speakers to please, long applause really just eats into the next speaker's time. Julie Menon, I'm going to call to the next, but also remind the speakers to please state your name before you speak to make sure everybody's got it. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Julie Menon, Chairperson of Community Board 1, and I'm joined by our Vice Chair, Catherine McVeigh Hughes. Our Community Board has passed numerous resolutions regarding this issue. On May 26, 2009, we called on the New York State DEC to prohibit the use of hydrofracking in the New York City watershed. Our concern then, and it is now, is that hydrofracking involves the injection of carcinogenic chemicals into the earth at extreme pressures. And what we're talking about here in terms of carcinogenic chemicals, it's really unconscionable. We're not talking about chemicals that we don't know what the effects are. The fact, quite honestly, that all of us need to even come out today to talk about this when all the safety studies haven't even been done is, quite frankly, not acceptable. Without more information, we are greatly concerned that hydrofracking in the New York watershed poses a serious risk of contamination to the drinking water of millions of residents in the greater New York area. Our concerns are founded on real evidence that natural gas grilling techniques have the potential to contaminate our drinking water. We have a lot of resolutions that we've done on this. I'm not going to read all of them, but we've submitted that written testimony. What I do want to do is talk about some of our concerns. Contaminated hydraulic fracturing wastewater, wastewater treatment plants currently designed for sanitary waste, limited DEC staff resources, specific funding for corrective action, identification of source of water to be used during the hydraulic fracturing process, vulnerability to earthquakes due to hydrofracking, inadequacy of prohibiting surface drilling within 2,000 feet of public drinking water supplies, cumulative impacts including air quality, same liability for both domestic and international companies, and reliability of shale reserve estimates. Now, this proposal under consideration by DEC, quite frankly, places an unnecessary and unconscionable risk on New Yorkers, as it only limits drilling to within 1,000 feet of tunnels and aqueducts that deliver water to our city, despite the requested minimum 8-mile buffer zone. Recently, the Delaware Governor, Jack Markle, announced that Delaware would vote no on the current regulations for hydrofracking in the Delaware River Basin, calling instead for a full study. So what we want to say, and before I turn it over to Catherine, is that we do not want you to play Russian roulette with the lives and safety of everyone in this room and all New Yorkers. And quite frankly, we don't want you playing Russian roulette with our most precious resource, which is our children.
Great. Sorry, I'm actually a hydrogeological engineer and have been working on this for 3 years. With 20 seconds left, it doesn't give you a whole lot of time, but Community Board 1 selected the no action alternative described in Section 9.1, and we outline in our testimony that we believe that the plan should be withdrawn and revised, and there are many key points that also need to be considered, including the cleanup escrow fund, an emergency notification plan. You need analysis of the wastewater treatment and disposal. You need a website that discloses which chemicals are being used and which specific locations, full disclosure of the gas leasing agreements and the ability for the leasing to the mortgage and the seller of the property subject to the lease. And also you need to address the socioeconomic issues, including the potential for worker injury and disease, along with mitigation measures. Thank you.
Thank you. Annie Wilson. Annie Wilson, card number 7. Oh,
Hi, good evening. I'm here tonight as an individual and resident of New York, of the universe, and also I'm affiliated with the National Lawyers Guild, and Joel Kupferman couldn't be here tonight, so I'm relaying part of his message in addition to my own. And as for a quick review of what is taking place here, I have to wonder, why are we combining, or are you combining, the revised draft SGEIS, the proposed high-volume hydrofracturing regulations, and the proposed state pollutant discharge elimination systems as SPEEDs permits in one event? These should be separate. I think that combining them actually somehow weakens the public impact in what we're here for in general, which is the SGEIS. So that's my first general comment. And I'm certain that most people have not had the opportunity to review the regulations and or the SPEEDs sections of the review tonight in the comments. Secondly, as it relates to the SPEEDs permit and your penalties for violations of the general permit conditions, and how will the DEC be able to enforce these permit conditions? Unlike most SPEEDs permit, these permits are expired within 5 years. However, how will these actual permits be enforced? And will the DEC be promoting citizen enforcement actions? Will the DEC have a website that will allow the citizenry to report any violations of the permits? We need to have this included, given that there is such short staffing of DEC. 2, how will DEC support legal redress? It seems like in the West, and where there have been lawsuits that might last 3 or 4 years, there must be a system of support, again, for law and justice and redress by the citizens. Relating to the flowback that will not be directed to reserve pits, and the cuttings that will be disposed off-site, where are you going to put these? Where are they going to go? We cannot process water in New York. We cannot remove the radioactivity anywhere except, I think, Utah. How do you intend to deal with the wastewater? How do you intend to deal with contaminating our watersheds in New York? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Carl Arnold.
Carl Arnold, I'm from CDOG and also the Green Party. What are we all doing here really? Is this a legitimate process? Will the DEC really listen to what people say today who are responding to the absurd joke the DEC made of the 15,000 responses it got last time? Who here does not know that the governor's fracking commission is hopelessly stacked? How many really believe the industry's deep pockets will not get in the way of safety? This is all about permitting through regulation. which is licensing corporations to get away with legalized destruction. If drilling's too dangerous for two unfiltered watersheds, it's too dangerous anywhere. Yet the DEC bends over backward to enable fracking. The DEC seems to think, never mind the myth of clean energy, never mind the myth of energy independence, or the myth of safety, or the myth of jobs. The governor's compliant DEC claims that it can regulate fracking. Really? What regulation can prevent the heavy metals and radioactive substances from coming up with the gas and spreading downwind? What regulation can prevent the extraordinary squandering of fresh water, 100% of which becomes contaminated permanently? What regulation can prevent our food shed from suffering a lack of sufficient water to feed us? What regulation can prevent up to 70% of fracking chemicals from remaining underground, becoming fuel for migration of toxic plumes? One of the many cruel jokes in this SGEIS is setbacks. Underground plumes are all over New York State, from Long Island to Endicott, and they continue to spread. In Sublette County, Wyoming, one plume traveled 28 miles. And the DEC is talking about drilling near schools, homes, and 1,000 feet or 4,000 feet from New York City water infrastructure, 28 miles. If the recommendations in the SGEIS become law, they'll protect the privileges of the few against the rights of the many, us. The oil and gas corporations are trying to colonize us. Do we want to become a third world outpost? No! The SGEIS, however it's tweaked, enables the poisoning of our soil, our water, our air, the foundation of the natural systems that sustain all life. Such an assault is both insane and criminal. If we continue on this path, all of us, the 99% and the 1%, will go careening over the edge. The DEC operates as if corporate rights are superior to the rights of the people. We protect ourselves only by asserting our right to protect ourselves. If we don't decide our fate, the corporations will. I'm just about to finish.
Okay.
It's our right and our duty to protect our lives. There's only one solution for criminal activity: criminalize it. Look for the petitions. Since it looks like the governor and the DEC won't protect our state, it's our right and our duty to protect it. New York State must criminalize fracking and everything to do with fracking. Our very survival is at stake.